My guest on this podcast is Kevin Wright, somebody who bought his first investment property 42 years ago, but he's been in financial services, broker and finance for property investors with an enormous amount of experience. We talk about many of the different challenges that have evolved over the last 4 decades. However, more importantly, we talk about now how it's still possible to buy property using none of your own money and no money down strategies. So let's get straight into the podcast. Kevin, you purchased your first property project, 42 years ago.
I did in 1983, yeah.
What got you thinking about that at a time when most people were probably not thinking about how do I make money from property?
Interesting question. 2 things. First thing was, I was living in what we now call an HMO, but back then we called them just bedsits.
Yeah.
And
Did it have a little basin in the corner?
Hey?
Did it have a little basin in the corner?
No,
Wash
but
basin?
No, it didn't actually. But it was like a shared bathroom and shared kitchen and that sort of thing, just like an HMO now, but without all the regulations and the fire stuff and that. And the landlord lived in.
Okay.
A guy called Paul Morris.
Yeah.
And he used to buy wrecks, do them up, and sell them.
Oh, okay.
And that I thought, oh, that's a pretty cool thing to do. I mean, he was a bricklayer, so he had a bit of an advantage because he could do a lot of the work himself, and he knew guys that he could pull in. And then the real clincher was my mum, bless her, she bought me a book, and I've still got it in my library, Property Renovation Profits.
Really? Wow,
Yeah.
back in the 80s?
Back in the 80s.
Oh.
Wasn't a glossy book like you see on Amazon. It was literally like an A4 self-published type of thing.
Gosh.
I've no idea where she got it.
Yeah.
And I've only ever found one other person
Yeah.
that has still got had a copy of that book. But it just basically went through how to buy, refurb,
Right.
and then sell a property.
Wow. But that was the first project. That's what got you started.
So those 2 things.
Yes.
And I don't know. I've spoke to my mum since, and I've said to her, why did you buy me? What was it that you made me to buy that book as a birthday present? And like many years later, she said, "Oh, I don't know, love." But thinking about it, it could have been me talking about Paul Morris,
Okay. Yeah.
and like what he was doing, and that could be interesting. And somehow she found
Yeah.
this book. So there we are. So
And then you spent a lot of time in the financial services sector, helping people invest their money as well then.
latterly, yeah. In the early 90s, I got a job working for an insurance company as a financial advisor. Yeah, so and that was mostly people investing their wealth. You know, their 200, 300, 500,000 or whatever it was, and what spread of stock market based, predominantly stock market based investments would I partner up and divvy that up around. So
yes. And as financial advisors, I'm guessing you don't really advise on investing in property.
You can't advise on that. Absolutely can't. Yeah.
What do you think the logic behind that is? So as financial advisors, you're helping invest money, but property is off the table and class it as unregulated.
Yeah. So it's all governed. All the advice is governed by what was the FCA, which is now what was the FSA,
yes,
which is now the FCA.
Yes.
And they like stuff that they can monitor and quantify. And of course, it all has to be stock market, or it all has to be regulated investments, which tend to be big insurance houses and the fund managers. Everyone is regulated by the FCA, so they can put balance checks in all the way down, which fulfills their fundamental objective, which is to protect the retail customer.
Yes.
That's what they exist for, to protect the retail customer.
And the retail customer is the ordinary individuals, essentially, that we refer to as.
The man or woman in the street.
Yes.
Who may have no real understanding of finance. So their primary objective is to make sure that people that do understand finance don't exploit those that don't. And I guess you could say they do a good job, but property isn't a regulated activity in that way, so they can't monitor it and calibrate it and make sure that people comply with it. So therefore, it's not part of a financial advisor's.
Kind of remits outside the
Yeah.
limit. And I know, having spoken to you before, that you always had this fascination, but actually we should be investing in property.
Yeah. And it got to a point where I felt incongruent saying that, and I thought, no, I've got to stop doing this, because if in my heart I was saying, oh, you've got £500,000, I'll be putting it in properties and creating a portfolio and doing all of this. I can't do that as a financial advisor, so I've got to stop being a financial advisor. And at the time, we're talking about the mid to late 90s now.
Yeah.
Being a mortgage broker. And over as we went into this century, it became more than a mortgage broker, more of a finance broker, doing different types of finance other than just mortgages. Yeah.
Okay. And the vast majority of your clients were investors at that time, so you were kind of still leaning towards property investing as opposed to people buying their homes.
Yeah. So it changed probably in the early 2000s. So it started off with mostly homeowners.
Okay.
But also then mortgages for business people, so commercial mortgages for business people that wanted to buy their business premises. And then in the early 2000s, people that were investing in the way that we understand investing now, just buying residential properties to rent out, and still some commercial ones as well. So yeah.
So kind of 2003-4 up to before the crash, kind of 2007-8, there was that period where prices were just shooting up and stuff. How do you think the financing at the time was either supporting that or kind of holding that back in terms of, do you think some of that was working together? And
in hindsight, the financing was way too lax.
So it's really easy to get the money.
Easier than people now would ever believe.
Ninja mortgages.
Yeah, I mean, when I used to go to broker conferences, we used to have this little thing that we did between us, just as a joke. But we used to hold our wrist like that, and then we'd just say, "I can get you a mortgage."
Yeah, got a pulse, you've got a mortgage.
And literally, almost if you got a pulse, you could get a mortgage.
Yeah.
It was way too lax.
Yes.
Because people got mortgages that should never have got mortgages. I mean, I got mortgages for some crazy situation.
Yeah.
And you think, my God, why on earth would you lend to someone with that track record?
And do you think everybody was just turning a blind eye at the time because it was just everyone was benefiting? Do you think that's what was happening?
Yeah, I think so, really. I mean, the mortgage lenders were making money.
Yeah.
And there was very little. The FSA existed, but it didn't really have a lot of control. And it was far too light touch.
Yes.
So yeah, it. I mean, there's a lender called Mortgage Express.
Yes, I was just going to say there was a product that was infamous at the time.
It was, yes, and you could it was a same day remortgage.
Yeah. So there'll be many people listening or watching to this now will have no idea what you're referring to. So maybe explain what that model was that used to happen at that time.
Yeah. So in simple terms, what still applies today, you find a motivated seller that needs rather than wants to sell a property. And just for argument's sake, the property is worth 100,000 and you agree to buy it at 75,000. And, but Mortgage Express had an 85% remortgage product, buy-to-let mortgage product. So it was called daylight bridging. So you'd buy the property in the morning at 75,000 with bridging,
and they'd give you all the bridging money.
Give you all the bridging money
because you're buying it cheap anyway.
Because you're buying 100,000 property worth 75. You'd already lined up Mortgage Express to come in the afternoon with 85,000
as a remortgage.
So you bought the property with no deposit and 10 grand in the bank.
Yes.
Which you could then rent out.
Yes. And I remember in the early days when I was just getting involved with property and I'd see and hear some of this stuff, and it just blew my mind that this was even possible, or whether it was even legitimate. But it was.
There was nothing illegal or illegitimate about it.
Yes. Yeah, because they provided the products and the processes were all, there was nothing underhand going on in terms of how it worked.
No, absolutely no. It was complete transparency.
The Impact Network is a monthly event that we hold at our Birmingham office.
Brilliant event.
Mind-blowing.
The idea being to help accelerate growth for property and business entrepreneurs. We get like-minded people together to learn and network from each other, and also some fantastic speakers. Like, for example, we've had sessions today on scaling and growing your business, having the right teams around you, how to create a passive house in terms of investment, and also using AI to create content. This is not AI, this is a real me. I look forward to seeing you at the next event.
I mean, I didn't have anybody quite that active, but I know there were people buying five a week on that basis. They built up, I used to network with people that built up 100 property portfolio in about 2 years.
Yeah, just doing this same model.
Just doing that same.
They were just going out looking for distressed sellers, people that would sell their property cheap, and they would just use this model to buy it for effectively nothing, for no money.
Yeah.
So we'll come back to credit crunch in a moment, because that was clearly a defining point for many people in terms of the way what happened in property and finance. But when somebody wants to get into property, and people think about getting into property today, often there's a desire, I want to achieve a certain amount of income from property. But often the finances don't quite line up. So what's the challenge you see people in that situation? What are they missing and don't understand?
Yeah, there seem to be some pivotal figures. Everyone's different to a degree, but for a lot of people, they think if I can get $3,000 a month out of property, I can leave my job. $5,000 maybe if you're a high rate taxpayer. But
so you're thinking about the equivalent of what, say, a typical salary would be.
Yeah.
If I'm earning this much from property, that's the equivalent to a bog standard salary.
That gets me out of my job.
Yeah.
So that's a sort of aim that people have, I think, when they come into property. I mean, there are people that are more vocational, so they don't want to stop what they're doing because it fulfills a different need for them. Yeah. They just want to do it with more control and do it when they want rather than when they have to.
Yes.
But
gives them choice.
Yeah. So it's one of those two things. Either I want to be full-time in property because I have an unfulfilling occupation, or I want to be part-time in property because I have more of a vocation that I just want to have more control over when I do it.
Yes.
And so the big problem is no one starts out with enough cash to build that much portfolio. Almost everyone has a shortfall of cash needed to build that portfolio, whether it's 5 properties, 10 properties, 20 properties, whatever that is. The big issue that stops people getting started is they can't see how to build a portfolio with the cash they start off with.
Yes. So even if you're using some very simple numbers, and let's say they wanted 35 to 50 grand a year in terms of income, and if you were just going to buy a property outright to generate that income, your 350 to 500,000 in cash is effectively what you'd park to get the equivalent of 10%, which is not easy these days anyway, but let's say to get a 10% return. And very few people start that with that sort of money to be able to do that.
I don't meet them. If they're around, they must be, but I don't tend to meet them.
Yes. So what's the path, do you think, the correct path to follow in order to achieve that?
Well, I think you've got 2 ways to do it, which is essentially using other people's money. But the question is whose money? And there's a fork in the road which you can go down. Now, the common school of thought is you borrow private money, and a lot of trainers teach it. The money's in the bank, or the money's in the room, and all that type of thing. Be your own bank, which in theory there's nothing wrong with it. It's not wrong to teach that, but I think in practice, particularly if you're starting out with no experience in property, it's way more difficult.
You don't have the credibility, and it doesn't inspire the investor with confidence to kind of lend money to someone in that situation.
It's a way tougher ask, yeah. I think a lot of people fall by the wayside trying to implement that model and getting very little traction. Yeah, that's one way.
Yeah.
The other way is to use creative finance, is to use commercially minded finance, not buy-to-let mortgages necessarily, because they don't, buy-to-let mortgage lenders in almost every circumstance do not allow you to borrow the deposit.
So, meaning they always want you to put some money in and the bank will provide the rest of it. On a buy-to-let, it's typically about 75%.
Yeah. So that mortgage lenders, underwriters are very skilled now in drilling down several layers if need be to find the true source of the money. And as soon as they find out you've borrowed it and it's not yours, they terminate the application.
Yes.
So that again makes it, even if you can get people to lend you the money for the deposit rather than the whole purchase price, you've still got that barrier to overcome. Yeah. So that angle, I think, is much more difficult to get to make a start and get even onto first base.
And even if you are using a bit of smoke and mirrors, end of the day, it's mortgage fraud.
It is, yeah. Because if you misrepresent aspects of the bond, put it in simple ways. If you conceal a material fact that would alter the lending decision, that's a fraudulent action.
And that's a very broad catch-all type statement, really.
Yeah, it is. So if you fail to tell the lender something that would alter the decision if you told them something, if you told it to them, if you were open and transparent, then whether you believe it or not, you've committed mortgage fraud.
Yes. And so in simplistic terms, let's say you're borrowing a personal property, £100,000, you're borrowing 75,000 from the bank, and you don't tell them the other 25,000 is not yours. That's basically what we're talking about. Yeah. Okay. So expand a little bit on this second route of creative finance.
So the second route is to use creative finance that allows you to borrow the deposit if you not just from private investors, but personal loans or even cash advances on credit cards. In fact, any legitimate and legal way that you can find to raise money, they're comfortable with that.
So essentially, the key distinction being the first method we talked about when you're borrowing a buy-to-let from a mortgage lender, you have to put some of your own money in.
Correct.
And here what we're saying is, you still need the money to buy it, but it doesn't need to be your money that's gone into that purchase.
And it doesn't always need to be 25% either. Yeah. So there are lenders that sit outside that main bank of lenders that lend on a short-term basis. They're typically known as bridging lenders. Now, bridging has got a very bad name, which I think is absolutely brilliant because it keeps most people away from using it.
Yeah.
So we get those of us that understand it and use it, we get a clear run at properties that other people wouldn't necessarily buy.
Yes. And not only, I guess, in that situation, they are flexible around how the money is put together and packaged together to do the purchase, i.e. where it's come from, but also the type of property as well.
So they'll lend on pretty much anything in any condition with one proviso.
Okay.
How are you going to make it mortgageable? How are you going to make it so that you could get a buy-to-let or HMO mortgage on it, or you could sell it to someone else that needs a mortgage? If you come up with a plausible reason or plan, yes, we know it's got a problem at the moment, whatever that might be. For example, it's got no kitchen, it's got no bathroom, no one can live in it. Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put a kitchen, we're going to put a bathroom, we're going to make it nice. We can get a mortgage on it, we can sell it to someone and get a mortgage on it. That sounds great. Here's the money.
Yes. Because bridging, I guess, traditionally the term was to bridge a gap. And so that's what they're saying is, so we'll give you the funds for now, but how are we going to exit from that bridge?
If you go back to back into the 20th century, then the only real use of bridging, it wasn't a commercial instrument. It was, I want to sell my house that I live in, haven't sold it yet, but hey, Saj, I want to buy your house.
Yes.
That's my dream house.
Yes.
I cannot risk losing your house, so I'm going to buy it from you and then sell mine afterwards. How am I going to do that? Well, I haven't got the cash to do it, but I could get a bridging loan. Now, the reason that's problematic is because it's dead money.
Yes.
But when you put it in a commercial footing, is that I'm going to borrow bridging finance. It's going to cost me 20,000, but I'm going to make 80,000 on that project.
Yes.
Does it make sense? Absolutely, it does.
And the general perception is it says it can be quite negative around bridging and that it's expensive. But I guess, is it expensive compared to what, in what context?
Compared to what is always my question.
Yes.
Yeah. And if the profit exceeds the cost, then that justifies the use of it. And if it exceeds the cost by 2 or 3 times, it certainly justifies the use.
Yes. And so I know this is something this is a thing that you're really known for, to be able to recycle cash and get money out of a property and to make your profit that way. So in order for this model to work really well and to be able to get the money out, which is a desire for many people, because then prior to credit crunch, there were lenders that were just allowing you to do that on the same day, and that all changed. So before we talk about how we're doing that now, then let's just talk about what changed in the credit crunch. Then how did lending change? How did it affect the property market?
It was probably a unique situation. There've been recessions before, and I've lived through some of them. But the difference was banks stopped lending, and banks never stopped lending in any previous recession. Banks couldn't get people to borrow money in previous recessions.
Yes.
But here you had that completely switched around in the credit crunch, 2008 and 9. People wanted to borrow money, banks wouldn't lend it.
Yes.
Yes. That was a unique situation, probably first time in 100 years, I guess.
This was the early time at the beginning of my property journey at that time when I got involved in property, and I started finding deals to sell on to other people. And I was stumbling across deals everywhere. They were just like, there was no shortage of deals.
No.
The challenge was trying to find people who'd want to buy them, and you could find people who want to buy them, but they couldn't get the finance.
Correct.
And so that, of course, had a massive impact on the property market as well. And that's what caused the crash, because there was that nobody wanted to buy property. It was the money wasn't available to buy property.
Yeah. And in previous recessions, people weren't confident enough to buy property, and banks had to come up with all sorts of incentives to persuade people to borrow money. So it was a complete reversal. Yeah, of every previous recession. It was it decimated property for a good couple of years.
Yes, and there were also people who saw the opportunity. I mean, I'd like to say I saw the opportunity that's got involved in property. I just happened to get into property at that time, and that's what was going on. But there were also people making a lot of money at that time as well.
Yeah. So the people that had worked out a way around it, really, and worked out a way to get finance, really had the market to themselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what is it that was working then, and how has it now evolved to what works now, do you think?
So immediately post credit
Yeah.
crunch. Yeah. Well, there were some dodgy schemes.
Yes.
Yeah. That involved.
I remember reading about many on forums.
Yeah.
Facebook.
That involved a lot of lying and fraudulent activity.
Yes.
But there were actually bridging lenders that would support a sensible project. And they were around from about 2011. Look, nature hates a vacuum.
Yes.
So when mortgage lenders weren't lending, then other lenders were either formed or transformed themselves into filling the gap.
Yes.
And the bridging market has expanded out of all proportion in the last 15 years. I mean, it's a very vibrant market now, with lots of lenders vying for the business.
Yes. And it's interesting, I've noticed in the last couple of years, some bridging lenders are now going beyond just short-term borrowing into sort of more medium-term, couple of years, 3 years, 5 years type lending as well. And it's interesting what you're saying, that it all seems to be evolving in that space, whereas that was just the domain of traditional banks originally.
Yeah. I mean, the bridging market is maturing. Some of them are getting into buy-to-let mortgages. There are a bunch of lenders now that are, dual-purpose lenders. They've got a bridging arm and they've got a traditional mortgage arm, 20, 25-year mortgages. So, it's evolved in that way.
Yeah. And you also teach this as the main thing about how to recycle cash, how to utilize lenders in the best way. So what type of property projects does this work well on?
Well, you're right that I've become known for teaching buy, refurb, refinance. In fact, I wrote the book on it. So check out on Amazon, buy, refurb, refinance.
So we'll link it in the description as well.
There you go. But yeah, so, you know, because of my brokering experience, and, you know, when I was brokering full time, I've brokered hundreds of bridging loans of every different sort, of all types of projects, from little 2-bed terraces up to, and flats obviously, and up to, you know, big apartment blocks in commercial buildings, and, you know, pretty much, you know, everything you could want to, every project you could think of, I brokered the bridging for it. So it's a, you know, a very broad base knowledge, and, you know, I understood that if you got good at this, and if you bought the right property at the right price from the right seller, fix the problem, whatever that was with it. And mortgage lenders are brilliant in that respect because they're so picky. You know, there's a list as long as your arm of things they won't lend on.
Yes.
Which is great because there's loads of opportunities to buy properties at usually discounted prices if there's a lack of demand for it. You know, if it's been sitting around for a few months, people haven't got the confidence to buy it. They're scared about what the problem is. And, you know, it's very natural to want to buy something that's fresh on the market.
Yes.
So it's about, you know, it's pretty much everything I teach is about counterintuitive behaviour. You know, very popular phrase. Several people have laid claim to it. I don't know who's the originator of it, but observe the masses and do the opposite.
Yeah.
And it's very much, you know, I teach that when you buy properties that have got a limited appeal on the market, and you fix the problem that's stopping people buying it, and adding exponential value at the same time. When you come to refinance that onto a mortgage at the uplifted value, you'll end up with next to none of your cash in the deal, which means that, you know, get it right, you can build a whole portfolio from the single pot of cash.
Yes. So earlier when we were talking about how do you create that 35, 50,000 pound a year income, needs a substantial amount of money, but actually from a smaller pot of cash, you're recycling that into different projects. You're doing one project, recycling, taking the money out and recycling again. So let's unpack some of that process a little bit that you're referred to. So what are the circumstances where it creates a situation where somebody will sell the property for less than what we believe the true value is?
Personal circumstances. Everyone puts their property on the market, and there's, I don't know, typically 1 million properties for sale at any given time on, of course, Rightmove and Zoopla. Now they all want to sell their property, but everyone puts their property on the market with price as their primary objective, speed as their secondary objective, and it's very difficult to do business with people at the prices we need to buy at to make a margin, with people where price is their primary objective. But as time goes on, I've observed this massive times over many years. Sellers get exponentially more motivated the longer they can't sell their property. And in fact, not just property, any commodity. You know, we can all think of a time when we decided to sell something, whether it was a car, whether it was some furniture, old computer. It's something we wanted to sell that we did own, we no longer wanted to own. And the longer it hung around like a bad smell, the more frustrated we got.
Yes.
It's a very natural human thing. Well, it's the same with people trying to sell a property.
Just happens to be more zeros on the end.
Yeah, that's right. The only difference. But the human behaviour is the same. And we've all seen people reduce the asking price. And what they're doing is reevaluating what good looks like. And they're modifying their expectations.
Yes.
And readjusting the price they would be happy with.
Yeah.
And if you watch the way that some properties go, you'll see that happen a number of times. So it could be a gradual decline. So it could be a what I call a motivation curve. Sometimes you get the motivation cliff. So they hang out for a price and they just go boom.
Yes.
And I was helping some of my mentees look for properties in London a few weeks ago, and we were seeing properties that were just being slashed by 100 grand at a stroke.
Wow. It's clear indications of motivation when someone is that flexible on the price because they want to.
Yeah, I mean, these were properties between 500 and £1 million.
Yes.
But they were
It's still a sizable amount of money.
They were just slashing literally in one go. Last month it was this price. This month, 100 grand cheaper.
Yeah.
So what we're waiting for is those scales to reverse. So we can do deals with people when speed is a greater need than price.
Yes, that becomes a primary factor.
So when speed is the primary factor and price is a secondary factor, that's when people accept offers.
They're willing to be flexible in the price in exchange for speed.
Yeah.
And so that's someone's circumstances that can lead to them being flexible.
It's almost always circumstance driven.
What about when the issues are with the property itself? What sort of things do you think create a lack of buyer demand when there's what sort of things in property?
So you go back to the premise of buy-to-let mortgages. In essence, the demand from the lender is the property is ready to rent with a bit of tolerance.
Yes.
Typically with some work that can be some reparation work that be done within 2 to 4 weeks.
Yeah. Minimal things like redecorating or just refreshing a bathroom or something. Yeah.
Could be that. Different lenders have got different tolerances. Some may say, well, we're okay with you replacing the kitchen and replacing the bathroom. As long as you can get it done in 2 to 4 weeks, we're okay with that. Anything a bit more with a greater degree of dilapidation.
Yeah.
And lots of investors waste valuation fees by not understanding this. Comes back with a nil valuation.
Yes.
Now, of course.
And just explain what a nil valuation is.
Yeah, because
not only have I experienced and seen many of those myself, it's a strange concept when you first hear about it.
Because in real terms, no property is worth, even if it was a shell, the land on it that it's on still has a value.
Yes. So it's never going to be worth zero.
No.
But the valuation report says zero.
Zero. And what it means is it has no value for mortgage purposes because it doesn't meet the criteria to get a mortgage.
It's not suitable security for that lender's product.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So any property like that where the lender says, we don't think this is ready to rent. More importantly, the mortgage lender's value is going around there and saying, would I pay money to live in this? And if they think not likely, then it comes back with a nil valuation. And the burden of proof, if you like, is higher for properties you want to rent out than a property you want to live in yourself, because they're more tolerant on properties you want to, but if it's a mess, but if you're able to live in the mess and fix it up over, a year or 2 or 3,
it's your choice.
Your choice.
Yeah.
But it's a different question when, okay, it's not, you're not going to live in this. You're going to get someone to pay you money to live in this. We don't think so.
And that lender is reliant on somebody being in there to pay the rent, so the mortgage gets serviced to them.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, because the mortgage is not an investment mortgage. You can say buy to let, but you've got SA and furnished holiday lets and also. So if you bracket it as an investment mortgage, relies on rental income, not personal income.
Yeah. To
pay the mortgage. So yes, they have to be convinced that it's going to be rentable.
So anything where a mortgage lender, a buy-to-let mortgage lender would say no, is really based on some issue with the property that the valuation boards come up with. That's really what we're looking for there.
Yeah.
And then we've got problems. We were talking about this before off camera, where problems that are fixable and problems that aren't fixable. And as you said earlier, it's the ability to be able to get a mortgage at the end, because those problems are fixable. You can fix a product and then get a mortgage at the end is the ones that we're talking about. That creates the uplift.
Yeah. most problems are fixable, except if they're sort of location based.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, you cite an example. If it's next to a substation,
Yes.
um, the whichever electric company is not going to move the substation.
No.
You know, and if it's if it's underneath a flyover, a common one is if it's next to commercial buildings.
Yes. Especially pubs, takeaway, fast food, these sort of facilities. Yes.
If a commercial property is next door or below, if it's a
Mhm.
flat, and it's got an enhanced antisocial element to it in the lender's mind, they always think of the nuclear option, if you want to term it that way, is you as a borrower stop paying the mortgage, we then have to repossess you. How much difficulty are we going to have selling that property?
Get their money back.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if they perceive we don't see the demand for it,
Mhm.
then they're just going to say, no, we're not going to lend.
Yeah.
You can't change that.
Yeah.
So those are intractable problems.
Yeah.
But they're in the minority. Most problems you can solve.
So when we're talking about essentially you're buying something cheap, you're improving it, fixing the problems, and you're increasing its value. And there's also where you can add value and force the value up in the first place. Typically, like for example, HMOs, where you're turning a family house into a HMO, producing a high income, and then people talk about the commercial value. I'm going to refinance it on the commercial value and get all my money out.
Yeah.
Um,
That's a double-edged sword, by the way.
so I was going to ask for your thoughts and opinions on that. So I agree. Not only can it be a challenge. Well, actually, you explain.
So the perception there is I gain an advantage if I get it value on its income rather than a bricks and mortar value.
Yeah, so you're borrowing way more than you would be able to ordinarily, say, compared to the house next door.
Not everywhere in the country. In the more affluent areas, the commercial value can be lower than the bricks and mortar value.
Yes.
So,
Like in the southeast, for example.
Yeah. Typically, London and the home counties, as they're called. Typically that wouldn't work there because the actual commercial value would be lower.
Yes.
Than the bricks and mortar value.
Yes.
But in the rest of the country, that could work well. Yeah.
And when you're doing this model, so the refinancing model, so you buy, refurbish, refinance, the refinancing is primarily dependent and driven by the valuer's opinion that turns up on the day to have a look at the property, because they're the front line for the lender, not what the broker says, not what you put on the application form. And what things should people be thinking about in order to get a favorable valuation?
Evidence of tangible improvements made. Yeah.
Photographs, bills for work that's been done, etc. Yeah.
So tangible evidence of improvements made. Yeah. That primarily that's it. And the more evidence is provided, the easier you make it for the valuer to give a higher valuation.
Yes. And so it's really to be able to demonstrate them, to give them the confidence to say, look, here's all the things we've done. It generally is worth more. So one things we encourage is look at comparables, make sure you've documented everything, photos. You can get a USB stick in their hands with all the photos of everything you've done, and that's really going to help you. If it's already rented, the evidence of the rent, because sometimes, especially when we're doing our properties, we'll smash rental prices for the market, and sometimes you get a surveyor coming and go, that's a bit high. So you want to be able to demonstrate that actually you've been able to achieve. It's not potluck that you've done on that occasion.
Sometimes even that doesn't work because I've seen it that they say you've got a tenant paying that right now.
Yes,
but this is the valuer. The valuer says, I think when that tenant leaves, you won't get the same again.
Yes.
So
they'll mark it down to what they believe the market rent is.
Yeah. So even and you think like, well, I've got a tenant. Here's a proof. Here's the AST. You've got to say that's the rent, and they'll say, Not necessarily.
Yes. This is where I think working with the right brokers as well who understand this helps, because they'll approach lenders who understand your product
Yeah.
rather than, I think the biggest mistake I see people making is they just look for the cheapest product. They think that one's cheaper, we'll just go for that, as opposed to actually, does the lender like what you do, and have they got an appetite for that type of property?
Yeah, I mean, the cheapest product is the one from the lender that will lend.
Yes, yes, because you could go for cheaper products and not end up with a product.
That's right. So you get
Yes.
declined.
Yes.
Because there's something that doesn't fit that lender's criteria, and so there's it's incumbent on the broker
Yes.
to understand the market and understand lenders,
Yeah.
the underwriters within the lenders, and what is their lending criteria, and that's a skill of a broker.
Mm.
You know.
Mm. And when someone's looking for a broker to work with, what 2-3 tips can you give in terms of what should they be looking for?
I think the broker themselves, this is a big one, or someone in or connected with the brokerage is an investor.
Mm. Yes. So they have expertise on the other side of the fence rather than just brokering the finance.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty defining factor.
Yes.
It doesn't necessarily have to be the broker you're dealing with, but the practice needs to be geared towards investors.
Yes. Yes.
So there's someone in there, but if you got someone that in the brokerage that I'm aligned with, we've got Isaac, and all week he just does investment mortgages. He doesn't do anything else.
Yes. And that becomes the niche, and you become really good at it. Yeah. So I know you've kind of transitioned away over time from doing brokerage work to mostly helping other people, the students, to kind of build their businesses, and that brokering is not your core thing, although you can still help people.
I mean, I stepped back from day-to-day brokering a few years ago, simply because the training, the requirements of training and mentoring people just grew out of all proportion.
Yes.
Really, that I had to make a choice between the two, and if I'm honest, I picked the one that's the most fun.
Yeah, I guess with brokerage, filling forms out and getting a deal done, we get 5 minutes of excitement, and that's it when the money lands, and then back to another form.
Yeah, that's right. But actually, choosing people that to work with, to train and mentor, and then watching them implement it and create a different life for themselves is incredibly fulfilling.
Yeah, that's what excites me so much about property, because I feel it's one of those things where you can create enormous financial change for your life, and there really isn't a glass ceiling. There's nothing to restrict you other than who you see in the mirror every morning. That's it.
Well, I was told on another podcast that I did, I don't remember saying it, but that the most amazing thing about property is you can change not only buildings, but lives.
Yes. Yes. That is so true.
And I'll lay claim to that quote now, because I actually use that in my training meetings.
Yes.
I use that as one. In fact, I've got it as a poster. It's on one of the walls.
Nice.
So there we are. So yeah, I think it's unique as an asset class. It's the only asset class that you can buy something for 4 times, typically 4 times the value of the money you've got.
Yes.
Because you can get a mortgage. You can't get a mortgage on shares or anything like that. And you can buy it below its true current value on any given day.
Which you can't do with shares.
Can't do with shares. You've just got to pay. And I think I think it's unique in those terms. I mean, you can, I teach people you don't actually need a 25% deposit. When you really understand the nuances of bridging finance, you can borrow 90, 95, or even 100% of the purchase price.
Yes. So this is something many people talk about. Can you buy property without actually putting any money down? Can you give us an example where you've done all that, or one of your mentees has actually done that?
Well, on my YouTube channel, which has got masses of short informative videos, the most watched one of all is how to buy property with way less than a 25% deposit.
Oh, wow.
it's got by far and away more views than anything
We'll
else.
find that and link that in as well.
There's a concept called market value bridging. It's one of the 5 variations of bridging that I teach. So bridging isn't just bridging.
Yeah.
It is, but it's also got variations.
Types.
I'll take you back to one of my mentees, NASA. Now, he bought a £250,000 property, a commercial property, and he put a 5% deposit down.
Okay.
12,500.
Right.
Now, that is creative finance. Now, the circumstances were that it was a care home that had shut because it had lost its CQC license. Because the cost of regaining that license was putting off care homeowners. So it was right for a commercial to resi conversion. But it was marketed as a commercial property. It had been on the market for a year.
Okay.
At 350,000. And no one was interested. And this was one of those motivation cliffs.
Yes.
Not a motivation curve that we spoke about. NASA eventually got it accepted at 250,000. So a full 100,000 below the asking price.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we had an inkling that it is actually worth more than the price that had been agreed because of the seller's motivation to sell them. Now, particularly if they were still paying a commercial mortgage, it was hemorrhaging cash, which a seller can only substantiate.
Yeah, as a care home, it's very likely that was the case.
Yeah,
yeah,
almost certainly. So, we used a bridging lender that lends on the market value, not the purchase price, depending what that would be. Now, when we sent the bridges value around there, he said, but it's worth 350.
Right.
Just the bricks and mortar value, it's worth 350.
Yeah.
So we'll lend based on 350 and we ignore the fact that your client is buying it, your mentee is buying it at 250.
Yes.
So what we did with that, we used that discount to discount to purchase price, that 100,000, that was almost all the deposit.
Okay.
So the other
equity has gone as a kind of deposit contribution. Wow.
Yeah. And I helped a young couple last year do the same sort of deal, much smaller figures. They bought a 95,000 2-bed terrace up in Lincolnshire. That was Jordan and Lisa. But it was marketed at 140. It was worth 140. So they just had to put 4,000 deposit down.
Wow. So it is possible. It is doable.
Yeah.
Sure.
But you need to understand, the type of property to look for, and have an understanding of how bridging finance works, and have a broker that understands bridging finance, which very few brokers do.
Yeah.
Actually. So yeah, but yeah, perfectly possible. Now, for both of those couples and many more, understanding that finance is that flexible completely changed the game.
Because it can accelerate their journey then.
Absolutely.
It also creates a belief the first time you do something or see somebody else doing something. And it was the same for me when I first was looking at the no money down stuff was happening. I didn't think it was possible. When I was meeting people that are actually doing it, I thought, maybe it's possible.
Yeah.
And the first time I actually did a deal, I thought, okay, I'm now a believer. It is possible.
It is possible. Yeah. It's right. Yeah. So, and those are the different levels of belief. Like you go from, that's impossible, I don't believe it, to, well, hang on a minute, other people are doing it. Doesn't mean to say I can do it, but it is possible.
Yeah.
To, oh, hang on a minute, I've done it. Of course it's possible. I believe it's possible. And then you just really take off. And I teach people to do it. And people.
So there are occasions still where it is possible to borrow all the money for a purchase if those circumstances all are lined up correctly. Yeah. Common, it's not going to be every situation, but there are several situations. Yeah.
But the two most common ways to do it are to buy something hugely under its true current value, not perceived value once you do this, that, and the other to it. True current value.
State, yeah.
Yeah, you've probably got to be looking at 35 to 40%.
So significantly below its current market value.
Yeah.
Yes. Because the lender will have enormous confidence then that if they lend all the money, their money's safe.
Sorry. Yeah. Because they're still only lending a percentage of the value of the property that they could sell at any given time to get their return of their capital.
Yeah.
And the second way is to put up additional security that you already own.
Yes, so that could be another property, another asset or something that's taken in as security. They don't necessarily need to borrow money against it, as it were, but it comes into the fold of security to give the lender confidence.
Yeah. So you put a different property in there that you already own, either personally or through a limited company, and effectively you're borrowing 100% of the purchase price of your desired property, but only maybe 60% of the value
overall
of both securities.
Yes. Interesting. Kevin, you've got an enormous amount of experience not only in finance, in structuring deals and recycling money. Where do you see the market going over the next 2 to 5 years?
I say this at my events as well, to give people a perspective. I think we're seeing an opportunity that probably comes around every 10 to 15 years. And probably the last real time it was such an opportunity was in the credit crunch that we talked about, the aftermath that we talked about earlier. It's no secret that landlords are leaving the market in their droves. You know, anything from, you see figures quoted 300,000-400,000 over the last 5 or 6 years. They exceed the market. So what I see is a generational change. Now they've got a reference point of, let's say, 15 to 25 years ago.
Yes.
Here's what it was like when we got into property. And with some degree of accuracy, they say it's not that easy anymore.
Yeah.
And we don't have the desire to continue to operate in the new market conditions.
Yes.
So we're getting out. They could have made their money. Maybe they're just too dissatisfied. Maybe they think it's it's too much hassle.
Yeah.
So they're getting out, and in their hundreds of thousands over a recent few years. It's also smoked out the accidental landlords.
Yeah.
The people that were never landlords in the first place, never had any intention to rent out property. Usually, they met someone who also had a property, and they decided to either move into one, and or to move out of both and buy a new one together.
Yes.
And for whatever reason, maybe it wasn't easy to sell. It was easier to rent it than sell it. So, and it's a defined term, the accidental landlord.
Yeah.
I think you're seeing those people get out as well because of the increased regulation and other tax changes that have been decided. I think the agenda must have been to push a number of people towards the exit.
Yes.
Yeah. But does that mean that no one wants to rent money? Well, not at all. Because what you've got is the new generation of landlords that haven't got a reference point of 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Their reference point is now.
Today.
So they just say, okay, what are the conditions that we have to live within to make money out of property?
Yes.
Okay. And within those conditions, can we make money? And if the answer is yes, then they're buying.
Yes.
So, and there's an opportunity to buy because we haven't got a rampant seller's market. We had it coming out of COVID in 21, 22. Probably as strong a seller's market as I've seen in decades.
It was crazy for a short period of time.
It was, yeah. People were like money drunk.
Yeah.
If you want to if that's even a phrase. But that just killed off in, certainly at the start of 2023. And now it's not a rampant buyer's market in a way that it's a rampant seller's market.
Yes.
So we haven't had a full swing of the pendulum, but I think we're certainly more in a buyer's market than a seller's market in the majority of places in the country.
Yes.
So I think there's the opportunity to pick up properties from more people that need to sell rather than want to sell.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think you've probably got maybe a 2-year window before that starts to dissipate.
Yes.
I think it's a great time to be in property or to get into property.
Yeah. I think that's one thing I've learned and that stuck with me. that in property, it's not you figure one thing out and you just stick with it. You evolve as a market evolves, conditions change, you adapt, you move. And those ones that are most adaptable are the ones that do well. And it's not jumping from one strategy to another, but it's gently evolving as market conditions evolve, you evolve with it.
It's Darwinian, isn't it?
Yes.
It's not the survival of the fittest.
Yes.
It's the survival of the most adaptable.
Yes. That's why, yeah, it's so true. So true. Kevin, I've really enjoyed this conversation.
I have too.
We can go on for hours. If somebody wants to learn some more or reach out and connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, I think just I'm on LinkedIn. That's a pretty easy way to contact me. Just put Kevin Wright. It's not a unique name, by the way. But I'll probably be the only one in the yellow shirt.
I was going to say the distinguishing factor will be yellow. Yeah.
So just look for Kevin Wright, and if I'm wearing a yellow shirt, that's pretty much me. So just connect with me on there. You'll see a number of links to stuff, whether it's to my YouTube channel or whether it's to one of my websites. But yeah, that's probably a good way.
Yeah, because you create lots of content as well. So we'll link those on the screen and in the description as well for people to be able to link through easy into those. Kevin, thank you so much for your time today. Much appreciated.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.